Hello, welcome. Welcome to the Passive House Component Spotlight with Zola Windows. We'll get going in a few minutes here. We'll let everybody arrive. It's going to be a great crowd. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. So with that, Michael, please take it away.
Hi, I'm Michael Ingui of Bax Ingui Architects, also working with Zack on the Accelerator. Thank you for joining us today. So a bunch of us know Zola. I mean, I'm sitting behind some really fantastic Zola windows behind me. I use them on our historic masonry retrofits for years, but today we're going to be focusing on Zola's uPVC offerings. The uPVC offerings, which offer similar performance as the wood-clad passive house windows that they're known for, and at roughly half the price. Shorter lead times, and you still get the same luxurious feel and comfort and function. I think you'll be really happy when you see some of the images coming through. They look fantastic. So with that, take it away, Evan.
That looked good, everybody. We're good to go?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
We're going to focus today performance and friendly projects. Product lines spotlight being on thermo uPVC. Budget friendly and high performance, I think, are 100% compatible with each other. So the way you're designing configurations, the way things are operating, we're building these awesome walls in these high performance homes, punching a bunch of holes in them, and how do you efficiently and economically fill those holes to where they're still maintaining the integrity of that high thermal performance wall, air tightness included. Even as we start the presentation, I would ask you to pay close attention to how much glass you're seeing in these projects, the way frames are kind of laid out, kind of emerging through the different project photos.
Tillamook Row, it's a beautiful project in Portland, Oregon by Green Hammer. It's a multi-generational living complex with that house in the middle, I believe, is their common area, and then the individual houses for the different parties. Very successful project, beautifully done, designed by Green Hammer and built by them. This is PVC. It's black because it used color foil on the outside. You can color PVC. It comes white as a standard, and a really nice high gloss white. But in some cases, obviously, you want to color it. You can do that by either putting an aluminum shell on it, which is fairly expensive, or putting a color foil on it. Here's another shot of the same project. This is a large PVC project we did quite a few years ago in McKeesport. That's Pittsburgh, and it's actually a shelter that was upgraded to passive house levels, or they tried to get quite to passive house levels while it was being used. So very challenging project for thoughtful balance to pull off. And they hit all passive house requirements, except the air tightness didn't quite make it. I think they ended up at 0.8 or something like that, which is still amazing for a retrofit that had to be retrofitted while under construction. So very large PVC project here. Now, how is the PVC frame built? Well, the glazing is really the same options as what you have in the Zola windows that most of you know in wood clad, or aluminum. Typically triple glazed, although we can quadruple glaze. Zola is very proud, actually, that we recently did a huge quadruple glaze project as we delivered windows to McMurdo, which is the Antarctic Research Station of the United States, which is currently being rebuilt, and Zola was the window supplier for that in quadruple. That is possible in PVC as well, although 95% of what we sell is triple glazing. You can go for soundproof options. You can go for bulletproof options, obviously safety glass. The sound ones, of course, are a huge thing at the moment in New York City, where the OITC requirement of 33, 35 is a big deal. The edge of the spacer, of course, is a warm edge spacer. We use typically concealed hardware these days, or at least recommended, unless it's really a budget concern, since concealed hardware means that the seals on the windows really are continuous on all four sides and are not interrupted by hardware. So it's both aesthetically more pleasing as from an airtightness point of view, much better. Now, as you know, PVC windows, at least of the American type, are a little bit unstable. That is solved in a European window by reinforcing it heavily. In our case, we decided to use fiberglass, co-extruded fiberglass reinforcements in the frame, in the outer frame, and the steel reinforcement in the sash. The reason why we use the steel reinforcement in the sash is that it creates so much rigidity that, except for very large sizes, we do not need to glue the glass in, which makes on-site replacements and service much easier. And then the other trick, of course, is multi-chamber. So, having lots of small chambers in the PVC frame, and then filling critical ones of those with foam, like you see these 3 cavities that are shown in blue that we fill with EPS foam. Oh yeah, here's another one of my favorite PVC projects. This one is in Park City, black PVC on the outside, and then this beautiful steel facade that the owner made there and welded together. On the inside, white PVC, large openings, and it's a stunning project. If we can send you more pictures. It's also it's featured on our website as well with lots of pictures. It's really showing what you can make out of these materials. On the other side of the spectrum, in a more traditional look here, that's a project down in Oregon that did not use coloring on the PVC and just made the white part of the color concept for the whole house. I think it turned out absolutely beautiful. Great lighting on this house as well. And big openings as well, which is really, we'll talk about that in a moment, but the big openings are a key to making especially European windows that can support such big openings, to making it both economically feasible, but even more importantly, it improves the performance so much better, because the glass performance is much higher, of course, in a modern window than the frame performance. So we try to have as little frame as possible for the amount of glass area we get. These are the 3 main types of PVC windows we sell. I didn't show the double glazed ones here, since you guys are all into triple glazing or more. There's thermo uPVC, then the clad version with aluminum cladding. This is really a clipped-on cladding cover, which gives you a lot of options in terms of styling, as well as the additional durability of aluminum. And then the insulated version on the right, which you can also clad. Now, those U values we are showing here are CE European U values. We, of course, do have NFRC testing on most lines. And if you need to get into that from OITC, AMA testing, and so on and so forth, we can help. It's a lot of numbers to throw onto the screen right here, but we work through it on a project by project basis to meet the requirements. This is just a quick overview, of what you can do style-wise. You can get a lot of cladding color options with these foils for either inside or out. It does raise the price, of course. White PVC is the most economical. It typically runs around $30 a square foot, $35 a square foot. When you're talking about coloring 1 or 2 sides, you're more in the 35 to 40 range. The cladding, aluminum cladding, is significantly more in price. I think it adds about $10, $15 a square foot typically. And then we can support you, of course, with Flixo models of the window frame. We can help you if you do SAI install calculations, and help you with the Passivhaus certification on that end of the deal. Plus, it's always fun to show these images, right? It's you know how Passivhaus is all about not having any cold spots on the inside. So, well, when I go into designing windows, actually, it's really this image we work from, trying to eliminate any green spots touching the inside. So that's kind of like my work view also when we're developing an improvement to a window. Well, with a bunch of passive house people, we could talk endlessly about glass, of course. This image is a little bit for the inner city dwellers who need sound performance, although now we see it more and more all the way across the country, actually. But with especially New York projects wanting to go typically for 33 or higher OITC, we've tested our windows for that, both in laminated and non-laminated configurations. In general, we achieve soundproofing by laminating the outside pane that's shown there with the blue line through it, and it gives you quite a few advantages. First of all, it raises the sound performance by about 7 OITC points, so it's significant, the difference in sound level on the inside for soundproof windows like that versus a standard one. It also gives you other good side effects. The other side effect is it's much, much harder to break through the laminated pane. Typically, these are resistant to about 30 blows of the German norm X. Of course, only the Germans can have a norm X, but it's kind of cool to know, I suppose. No one has yet broken through one of those successfully on any of our projects. And then the rest of the soundproofing is achieved by having an asymmetric IGU assembly and calculating and balancing out what exactly works. So that's, if you need that, ask for our Sanctuary acoustic lamination glass. There's lots of options to fine tune it to your project. Next slide, please. What can we build out of PVC windows? Well, nearly everything out of your regular Zola catalog. So of course, the majority of what is going to be used is fixed windows as well as tilt and turn windows. And then, tilt windows are many, many times used in bathrooms or in hallways. Often in the US, we see the configuration of having a fixed window over a tilt. Still, one of the coolest things, I believe, my house has a bunch of them in it, I admit, are lift slide doors. For those of you not familiar with lift slide doors, it's essentially a slider that can be done fairly large, and when you turn the handle, it lifts the entire operable sash out of the seals so that it moves really, with the push of a few fingers. I think they work extraordinarily well in PVC. I've recently been to some projects, a couple of years ago, actually been to some projects in the Pacific Northwest that had huge PVC sliding doors from us, and they were just fantastic and looked really great. So it's a product that is awesome in PVC. On terms of the larger projects, we are now actually getting ready for a large hotel projects where they decided to use lift slide doors in a short version of about 6 or 7 feet in height as windows in every hotel room. So it's just a really great window from a usability standpoint. Glass doors, of course, panel doors can be designed more or less to what you need, as well as, modern custom designs can be done. What we cannot do in PVC is bifold doors, folding doors, often referred to as nana walls from the competition. While technically possible, we don't like them in PVC. So if you need one of those in a project, you need to mix in an aluminum or wood-clad bifold door. Next slide, please. Oh yes, sizes. 20 by 20 inches as small as we can go for an operable. And largest ones, well, we're kind of proud about that. I said earlier that we don't glue the glass in order to have easy replaceability of the IGU. Well, if you really want to go really large, that's going to change, and we glue the glass in to become a structural part of the assembly. And that allows us to go to nearly a 4 by 8 foot window, which is just pretty massive. For any window, for a PVC window too, but it works great due to the gluing in of the glass. That means, however, if the glass ever breaks, the whole sash will be replaced by us, not just the IGU. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, this is a project we're just having under production right now. This is in New York City, 996 Manhattan. it's a great design. It needed the 35 OITC requirements as well. So it's a very heavy sound insulated project. It makes great use of large sizes and a very good balance of operable versus fixed windows to come in at a very competitive price. Next slide, please. Yes, this is another image showing, how big uPVC windows can be quite big. This is actually the Park City, Utah project as well. The high quality white finish works as is very well with a lot of modern interiors. Next one. Oh, okay. I think here I want to talk about sizing, and I mentioned before that it's really both from a performance and from an economics point of view, it's really important to try to use less bigger openings. I mean, we all know that, the more wall to window junction we have, the more weak spots we have there, because it's always a thermal weak spot that we have to calculate whether it is, well enough insulated. And obviously it's costly to make those junctions. So we really recommend use less openings, make them larger, and that also results in having less frame area, more glass area, better cost, and if there's a view, a much better use of the view. So the Zola team is really trained on helping you redesign if you're interested in your facade to really maximize the window package. That's why we like to be involved in projects early on and not just, at the time when it's time to order windows. Nearly all our successful projects we have worked with for probably a year before ordering. Next one. This is another example of the value engineering we typically do. Like we would, at the proposal might be something like the design in 201. We try to simplify it like that, or the 103, 104 below, where an architect who might not be familiar with the sizes that can be done in European windows breaks up a frame into a top light and a main light, which can be typically with our products done in one piece and therefore being more economical. Next one, please. Yes, this is another multifamily project actually by Sloan Ritchie. Is that correct, Zack?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, who is doing the presentation of Passive House Accelerator just on Monday, right?
Wednesday, okay. Yes, the happy hour on Wednesday. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was a developer. This was also a very, very short lead time project. These ones we shipped 3.5 weeks after ordering, which would never be possible in a wood-clad project or in an aluminum project. So 3.5 weeks production time in this case. We rushed it and shipping it then over to Seattle. That took a little longer, but that way we were able to meet his schedule there. And it's a mixture of double and triple glaze depending on the performance requirement of the townhouses that he had there. Again, a beautiful, beautiful modern layout though. Next one, please. Oh, here we again, we try to, even if there's fixed and operable windows and so on, we try to build them in as few frames as possible. So you see on left and right now, design-wise, it's the same layout. Typically, you'd have 4 different units for that, but that makes a lot of connections on site, which are never as tight as a factory-built connection. And also the structural weak point. So we try to combine them into one frames, and since we anyway build everything custom, we can do that and get lower cost, quicker install, and greater stability out of it. Less air leakage too, of course. Next one, please. This is the view house project we just discussed. I believe these are 2, it's 4 unit total, 2 you see right here. Next one. Thank you. I think we made it to the end of the presentation. Best person to contact is Evan, who was unfortunately not be able to speak as much today as would have been great. Showing off an entrance door here out of PVC with a nice low threshold. But now it's time for your questions. And thank you for hanging in today with the technical problems we had here. But I'm glad we could figure it out.
Yes, Florian, I think that you deserve a standing ovation from the from the audience here for handling those. Nicely done. Very cool under pressure, and thank you everyone for your patience on that. That's awesome. So we're going to go into jump into questions and answers now, so I have been keeping a list of questions, and we've got quite a few. So. The first one from Mary about the production facility. Mary, do you want to come on and ask that question?
Hi, I was just wondering, you talked about your production facility and your automated process. I was just wondering where it is.
Oh, our production is in Poland. We're producing about 3 hours east of Berlin. We're trucking then from there to Hamburg, Germany, and shipping from there.
And so typical shipping times to the West Coast would be?
West Coast, we go through the Panama Canal because we don't, in comparison to US windows, which have breather tubes, we try to avoid that whenever possible in order to keep the argon in and, avoid fogging off the window 5 years down the line. So for the West Coast, we ship through the Panama Canal. Currently, the time to ship from our factory in Poland to the West Coast, Seattle is 5.5 weeks. Los Angeles is about a week shorter.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great, Graham, you're up next.
First of all, great presentation. Nice to see you, Florian, and Evan, even though we can't see you, he was your perfect wingman, flipping that over very quickly. My question was based on something I saw at the last Passive House happy hour, and they were talking about bird-proofed glazing. I guess it's fritted or something to make it less likely birds will run into it. And there were issues around the coatings, and they were just talking about the difficulty of that. And I think they had to temper the interior pane or it was some complication. So I was just wanted to geek out a little curious about your insights or experience with that.
Is Evan back on to talk or?
No, he's having trouble, still
Okay.
trouble getting on. So he's working on it. Yeah.
Sam did comment on that. So my question is more of a formality at this point, I think. So we can just skip it if you want.
So I believe we can do it. We have not done it before. It's in our catalog as available. The issue is always when you do even a minor glass change as a manufacturer, that you have to, at least if it's in areas that require NFRC, that you have to bring it through the entire NFRC testing process again. So, we are actually extremely flexible of what we can do in glass types. The thing is, we often have to have the timelines and the advance warning for it to run it through the US NFRC process, which will add, if it's only glass, it'll add 4 weeks. If it's a frame change as well, it's much more complicated.
Thank you.
Steve at Berkeley, I think you're up next.
Yeah, hi, Florian. Great presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
I had a question about you folks generally provide all of the values we need to do PHPP calculations for certification, all of that stuff, except for science stall values. And my question was, well, how can I get enough information from you folks, like say maybe Flixo files or things of that sort to do a science stall calculations? And
Right.
Sam actually answered me privately, but maybe there are other people that would like to hear the answer on that.
I should probably see what he answered already. But
He said, contact me.
yes. So for nearly all frame types, we have the Flixo files here ready. Now, of course, sometimes the difficulty is that we have a very, very wide assortment of windows. So there's sometimes a frame here or there that we will have to make the Flixo file for. We used to make Sci install values for customers. We currently don't have the staffing for this. I hope that next year we'll be able to provide that as a service again. In the meantime, we can try to work it out together or provide you the Flixo data for it and the guidance for it and samples so that you can integrate your wall section into sample wall sections we have done before.
Great. Yeah. I mean, actually, if you any intermediate Flixo files, you can provide just the frame profiles and material lists and things like that. That would
Yes.
be helpful too. So I'll
Right.
take whatever I can get.
We're totally happy to do that.
Fantastic. Good. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, Paraic, I think that your question was probably answered, but if you'd like to pose it, you're very free to do so now. And I'll pause for a moment, and if not, okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that? I think the answer was 8 foot by 10 foot. That is for the largest lift slide units. That's true. That is per sash size, right? So if you have an OX, a fixed operable, you can do 8 foot by 10 foot in each of the glass panes. So you can have it 20 foot wide and 8 foot high, or 10 foot high and, well, in PVC not 10 foot high, but 10 foot high and 16 foot wide. Or if you have an OXXO, you can double that again.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So, Apeksha, it sounds like you have a follow-up question.
Hi. So my question was about if you are considering incorporating shading devices within the windows as you go into triple and quadruple glazing, because shading device is something which is external to the building, and you would rather want to do that rather than tinting the windows or reducing the VLT of the windows. So just wanted your opinion on that one.
So, I mean, yes, you're right. So first of all, once you have triple or quadruple glazing, really, once you go high performance, the shade needs to be on the outside. I'm just making that clear to everyone here. It needs to be on the outside of the window rather than on the inside, because the heat that is inside once will not go out again from an inside shade, and you'll just air condition it out. External shading can be ordered through the window manufacturers on bigger projects. On select projects, we have done that. We have 2 or 3 projects that we have done that. Or you can do it separately, and we'll help with the coordination of these things.
My question was more about integrating it within the glazing panes. Is that something you all are looking at?
Sorry, I misunderstood you. We have decided not to do this, and I can tell you why. In order to service that, it only works on operable windows, and nearly every project has a mixture of operable and fixed windows. And whenever you see those fancy, integrated shading devices in the glass, that really only works on operable windows. So it's hard to get a consistency for a larger project with integrated shading in between. The other issue is that if you have integrated shading, that cavity cannot really be argon filled or very airtight. So the only way that it would work, and we've actually done quite a bit of development work with it. The only way that it would work in a passive house style window is that we have our triple glazed IGU, and then just outside that IGU to have the shade, and then a 4th separate pane on the outside. That is technically feasible, but it becomes pretty expensive at this point, and you still have the problem of not being able to use it in fixed windows. So that's why we advise to use true external shading outside of the window, which is more consistent, cheaper, and just works better.
Did that cover it for you, Apeksha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, fantastic. So Cameron, you're up next. You had a couple of questions.
Yes. Hi, Florian. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you guys. I'm thinking of a particular project. We have a 60 foot by 360 foot 1965 mid-century modern classic with the upper 2 stories all glass, concrete waffle slabs separating it, and separating the floors. And the exterior glazing seals are failed. And so we're looking to restore the building, but we're also trying to do it in an energy efficient fashion. So we're looking at potentially adding an interior glazed system, multi-glazed, that would stand such just inside the building. And the concern that I have is solar shock as to how the systems may interact, whether we have the glass fracturing, so forth. Have you ever run into anything like this?
I've worked on a couple mid-century buildings before. I've actually owned one myself for a while, and so that's a reasonable concern. Solar shock. We would need to look at it, at the details and layout of this one specifically, but solar shock really only is an issue on non-tempered glass. And in most cases in a mid-century modern, your glasses are so big and going to the floor anyway that we would temper everything and all three panes, at which point solar shock isn't really an issue anymore. But if you want to, want me or Evan to look at the project, then send it over and we'll give you our input on what we think about it.
Great, thank you, will do.
All right, fantastic. So that is my list of questions from during the presentation. I want to invite folks to ask questions from the floor now, if there are any, and otherwise we'll close it up soon. So any questions or more?
I would like to ask a question.
Yeah, great.
Here in Vermont, we're trying to modify the code because it's way behind. It's like 70% short from passive house. And one of the issues are the windows. Prescribed code or window code is double hang, double pane. And in Vermont, they like an R3 window, they don't work. Basically, the market here is dominated by Marvin and Anderson windows. Do you have any market comparison of what like triple case windows would do? Because that's what the government here is asking us, whether our windows, the passive house type windows, are cost effective or not compared to whatever is available on the market.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand the parts of the question. So you're talking about that the dominant style is double hung, right?
Right. Have you made any comparison of the cost effectiveness of 3 pane windows, passive house certified or non-certified, compared to standard windows double hang, double pane?
Okay, so it depends a little bit where your standard double hang, double pane window comes from. If you're looking at like a Marvin Ultimate or upscale Marvin window, then our triple pane wood clad windows or all wood windows are in the same ballpark. But you get obviously a much better performance out of it. Now the complication that is in here is the double hung look or layout, which, as you probably know, the double hung with the sliding means that you generally don't really get any airtightness out of it, and we don't want to really build something that's not airtight. Now, I've changed the virtual background on me in the meantime to a project that is double hung, and that is, or looks like double hung, and is built by us, because this is a problem, of course, that the historic areas of New York have a lot. And for that, we have developed a window that is fixed in the upper part and tilt-turn in the lower part, but from the outside looks exactly like a double hung window. It's a lot of work to build those, but that is really giving a lot of performance for a window that needs that style. However, that is only economically feasible where it's a requirement from a historic preservation kind of view, like in this building behind us, which has about 100 of these windows, because now we're looking at probably twice the price of a regular double hung.
Right, and the price that you were talking about, 30 to 35 per square feet, is that X Works in Poland, or is that landed here in the States?
So the way we charge is we ship every job by dedicated container. So we're unable to do small jobs because if we would start sharing containers and running things through warehouses, sooner or later, forklifts go through windows and delays. I mean, it's not worth it. So we run a container to each job site, which is to New York $4,800, to the rest of the country $5,800. So that basically means that unless you're ordering windows for $35,000 or more, we're not really cost effective, but we can get really cost effective on orders bigger than that. The prices I mentioned are for PVC windows, though, right? If you're talking
Correct,
you're
but
talking wood clad here somewhere else.
correct. But is that price X Works in Poland, or is that price here CIF US?
That is plus the 4,800 or 5,800. It includes the customs and all of that it takes to bring it in.
Okay.
So yes, it's the $30 to $40 times your square footage roughly, plus the 4,800 or 5,800 shipping, which is pretty much independent from how big the project is.
Okay, thank you.
I wonder if you could compare the durability, cost, U-value, and other qualities of PVC, vinyl, fiberglass, and wood.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's one of those questions where where I think there's a lot of you know, wishful thinking about it. So let me tell you the experiences that I know personally, and I've looked endlessly for studies, and there's some studies. The best studies I've found out of Europe talk about that they expect today's vinyl windows to last 20 to 30 years. Today's wood windows with maintenance every 5 years, 50 years, and wood clad longer than that. Okay, so that's the best study I found. Now, as for personal experiences, I own a property in Germany that got PVC windows, white PVC windows installed in 1988. It's about 25 windows, so that's now, what, 32 years old. I've not repaired or replaced a single one of them, neither the IGUs, nor the hardware, nor any of that. Now, that is in northern Germany. It does not get extreme sun exposure or something like that, but I think that's pretty good, and those windows still look good. As for wood windows, well, it really depends on how you maintain them. Yeah. My dad has a property where he just pulled out 70-year-old wood windows just because he wanted to go from single glazing to triple glazing, not because the windows were bad. The other question, of course, is what does foiling do to PVC windows, while we're on the PVC window subject. And the foil manufacturers used to really avoid the warranty question, or when we would read the warranty, it would be like, well, we give you new foil. Well, that doesn't really help because the work is getting it on there, right? But in recent years, there has been a lot of testing done by our foil manufacturers up in Colorado and Utah. And those foils have actually massively beefed up. That's why for those who order a lot of PVC windows from us, our color selection has changed last year as we changed our foils to ones that are really, you know, long-term durable and tested in the mountains. Now, no one has really tested those foils for longer than 10 years, honestly. And of course, the darker the color is, the more it heats up. So I believe that, you know, the light foils are, of course, the more durable version, or if you have really extreme conditions, to at least on the south side or the west side, which gets blasted the most, to consider an aluminum cladding.
All right. We have gotten a number of new questions here. So Ian from Vancouver.
Hi there. You mentioned the size limitations for some of your windows, the lift and slide, the tilt and turn. What are the biggest you can do for fixed or your sliders? And also, you know, thinking indoor air quality wise, is there any implication for uPVC versus wood?
The maximum sizes on there's two things. You either get limited by glass size before you start paying for oversized glass, or you get limited by frame limits, right? So a glass piece cannot be bigger than 8 by 10 foot unless you're paying oversized charges, which racket cost up considerably pretty quickly. Like we've just delivered like 11 by 14 footers into somewhere in the US. But, you know, the shipping cost went from $5,000 to $20,000 just to get it through, right? The other limitation is frame size. I don't know if Evan is here and can give me the maximum frame size for PVC, because I don't have that one in my head. Anyway, if you hear that, Evan, maybe you can type it in somewhere. For sliding doors in PVC, the maximum height, I believe, is 8 foot, and then each sash can be 10 foot wide.
If I remember correctly, the maximum height is 8 feet and width is 47 inches. on a
No,
uPVC?
not for the slider. For the
Oh, okay.
slider, it's
Yeah,
close
yeah,
to
yeah.
10 foot.
Yeah.
The sash.
Cool. Yep. Great. Ian, does that cover it?
Oh, I asked also if there was any indoor air quality
Oh, yes.
ramifications.
Not that we know about. I mean, is it PVC? Yes. Does it smell? No, not when it arrives with us. I have never heard of that concern, especially in a passive house that at least has, you know, a basic air exchange guaranteed. I mean, obviously everything off gas is a little bit, right? But we have not heard of that as a concern, or don't have data of problems of that. Where it of course becomes an issue is when you're talking about what happens when you have a fire, right? We have actually recently gotten into this and gotten the flame spread data and so on for it, but that we can hand out if you contact us.
All right. So next up is Graham. You had a couple questions, I think.
Actually, just one.
Okay.
First, I said I wanted to ask a question, then I said what the question actually was. But in any case, I have a client in the Sierra foothills, and he has concerns about night cooling, night ventilation in summer, you know, opening the windows and trying to cool the house down that way, and concerns about how narrow the openings of the tilted window are around the opening, particularly with a deep wall. And I just wanted to hear what insight or experience or advice you had on that.
All right. So the tilt function can be set to 2 different tilt levels of about 4 or 6 inches. How much airflow you get through that is of course a function of how you build the window reveal as well. So from a passive house point of view, where we want to over insulate as much of the frame as possible, we do have, you know, some cases of people who, you know, use concealed hinges, over insulated the frame as much as possible, and have the windows installed fairly deeply in the wall, where you do then get limits of how much air you get through. We have other cases where the reveal was a little bit wider or flared out to get much more airflow. And then the third option is, you know, tilt and turn windows also turn, and we can build them in a way that you can lock them in the turned open position as well, like a stopper mechanism basically, so you can have them non-flapping around.
Cool, thank you. Do you have any knowledge or research on like how much that opening size really affects this? I know that's a hugely general question, but like, is it a big deal if it's 1.25 inches versus 3 inches generally?
I don't have like really good data on it, you know, and of course in the moment you have any wind on the house, the whole thing is completely different than if you have air that completely stands still, right?
And yeah, and elevation changes between windows that are open and whether they're coupled, right, or doors are between and everything else.
Right. I mean, most customers who need a lot of night cooling do have, you know, tilt windows higher up that are on an electric motor that basically suck out the heat at night.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Michael Ingui, I think you're up next.
So I had a question, because if we were to use them, I'd probably wind up using Zola wood windows on the front facade and my uPVC windows on the back facade. What are the real differences with the rails and style dimensions? Because I'll want them to look similar front to back. And so when I'm inside, are they similar to, like, let's say, a simulated double hung?
They're really close. You mean basically the sash profile dimensions are very similar. Maybe the PVC is 1/4 inch wider or something for a standard window. The only time when it starts to differ is when in PVC, when you really start maxing us out on sizes and go for really big units, we start to use slightly bigger frames. However, it's typically not that visible because proportionally they still look slimmer.
Got it. So I'm looking at, like, I've got these are wood windows behind me, wood Zolas. And yep. So would I be looking at a very similar profile?
You would look at a 1/2 inch wider profile.
Oh, that's not bad. All right, cool. Thanks.
All right. Mary, You have a question about fire resistance.
Yes, I was just wondering if you have any information on fire resistance of the uPVC frames compared to other frame types, especially in WUI areas, you know.
In what area? Sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
WUI, you know, wildland urban interface.
Oh, yeah. Wildland urban interface. Right. So we do have the flame spread data for that, which I believe for WUI is fine. I have to look that up once more, but I believe it's okay for WUI. The other thing, of course, for wildland urban interface, and I'm pretty serious about that because I don't know, the big Ashland fire of last week came up to 4.5 miles from my house here. So the main thing with WUI is to use tempered glass on the outside. Right? Because tempered glass will basically keep the fire out until someone sprays cold water on it. Then it's too much as well for that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I think that's all our questions. Are there any other questions that people would like to ask? This is your chance. All right, going once, going twice. All right, yeah, lots of nice comments. Thank you very much, Florian. Thank you, Zola. Okay, so I'm just going to share something real quick, and then Michael will close it up here. And that's just that stay tuned for our next Passive House Component Spotlight. This will be with Partel, and it will take place on Thursday, October 29th, 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern. There will be lots more information about that coming up. So with that, Michael.
All right, guys, I want to just say a thank you to Zach, but thanks both Florian and Evan. Evan, that was a fantastic presentation. And, it was good enough where Florian just went right into it. So, and again, these experiences continue to be fun. So I'm looking forward to the next sessions with Passive House Accelerator. Thanks all.
Thank you. Have a great day. Good weekend, everyone. Take care.